Dick Cavett Show with special guest Groucho Marx and Bob Rosengarten and the orchestra. Ladies and gentlemen, Dick Cavett.
Please, I only have a certain amount of time to tell you. This will not be one of my funny monologues. I thought I'd tell you that in front, so you'll know. This is a sort of special show tonight. Some weeks ago, we taped half an hour with Groucho Marx. That was our intention because of a preemption of a golf tournament. But at the end of a half hour, Groucho was so hot and he was so funny through the half hour that he just stayed here, and the studio audience saw a brilliant hour with Groucho, and you never got to see it. Some of you only saw about a fourth of it. And one of the things I'm proudest of is that I know Groucho Marx, and I've heard him talk this way in private life, and tonight he did it on television, and shortly you will see the uncut and edited version. It will include a great Harry Ruby song. He will sing Lydia. He'll talk about his brothers and Margaret Dumont and a line that was censored from Night at the Opera, and a lot of things. It's really a sort of classic hour, and I wanted you to see the whole thing because a lot of you wrote in about it. So I don't know what else to say, except that you will see an hour of conversation with Groucho as he would talk in your living room. You can take my word for it. He's that funny off camera and on. We will come back shortly, and you will see the man who, when asked what he did on his trip to Africa, said, "I shot an elephant in my pajamas one morning, and how he got in my pajamas, I'll never know." We will be back with the great man after this message. My guest list tonight in alphabetical order is Groucho Marx. Groucho is, I guess, too wise to be identified as just a comedian, and he's also too funny to be thought of as just an American institution, which he is. And I don't want to get too reverent because he sort of invented irreverence on the screen. Will you welcome one of the landmarks of comedy, a great man, the incomparable Groucho Marx.
I must be going. I cannot stay. I came to say I must be going. I'm glad I came, but just the same, I must be going. Very interesting, always looking at the broads in the front two rows.
Now, wait a minute. I can't help noticing your hat.
My I don't understand that. What's wrong with it?
It has curious little people on the top.
Well, I'll tell you, this is in deference to the golf tournament that's going on in the vast west part of America. No, and I wore this when I played golf, and it distracted the caddy from watching me play. Never could find the ball, except the one up here. Okay. They said I had plenty on the ball, but it was on my hat.
I understand.
Some colloquialism like that. How you been?
Good, I've been fine. It's nice to see you in New York.
I'm glad you're back on the air, and the proper time, too.
Yeah?
Not at 4 o'clock in the morning. Whenever I saw your show last year, I was eating oatmeal. That's what they called prime time in California. That isn't all they called it either. Well, you look fine, and this show's going to be a big hit because you're on at 10 o'clock at night.
Right.
A lot of people are going to watch it.
I'm on at 9 Central Time.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I would go from here to arsoning.
Would you?
As far as I would go. Do you know anything about arsoning?
Not a thing. If you asked me about arsoning, I would be stumped.
Yeah. How long since you've been stumped? I don't know.
No. I don't know what's happening.
Well, how are you? That's the main thing.
I'm fine.
Somebody once said there's only two things that are important, sickness and death. And since you don't have either of them, you should be very happy.
It's odd to see you in New York. You're usually in California.
It's odd to see me?
No, odd to see you in New York.
Yes, I don't come here very often anymore. This is my birthplace.
That's right. I was
born in 78th Street, between Lexington and 3rd. And then we moved to 93rd Street, and I lived there for about 14 years.
Mm-hmm. I was there the other day. They're tearing down part of your old neighborhood.
This is not just a coincidence, you know. They're throwing everything down. They've turned the school that I used to go to. That was at 96th Street and Lexington Avenue, PS 86. Royal Piper was the something that they used to holler. Mm-hmm. They hollered other things at me. You know, we used to go to school in the morning. My mother always fixed sandwiches for us in the morning to go to school because we lived in 93rd and the school was at 93rd. But by the time we got to school, we were hungry again. So we always ate our lunch and then we went home and had lunch again in 93rd. My mother was always so astonished. She said, I prepared lunch for you. Why don't you eat it? She says, we ate that on the way to school. This is why I didn't get an education.
They're tearing down a brewery. Was that a favorite of yours?
I had an uncle that used to work there. He was a private detective in a brewery that makes draft beer. It was called Rupert's.
Yeah, that's the one.
And I don't understand a brewery having a detective. What does he steal in there, draft beer?
I don't know.
Of course, it was during the war. It was the First World War, and he was probably in the draft, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of silly to waste time on that one. Silly to waste time on this whole show, if you ask me.
I don't know how to
You know,
take
there's
that.
only one men's room in the whole building, you know? And that's for women. Boy, there's nothing like a thrifty network. Eh?
I don't know how to apologize for that.
Well,
There is
yeah,
only...
It isn't your responsibility. You weren't hired for that purpose.
No.
What purpose for, I never will understand.
Glad you cleared that up.
Yes.
You claim to have mellowed over the years and all that, but I had dinner with...
Think so?
Well, not so much. We had dinner at the Colony the other night. Or I shouldn't mention the restaurant.
Yeah, no, not only that, you lifted the tab, too.
Well, it's a very dignified
astonished
place.
me.
Well, you wore a napkin on your head during dinner.
This is true.
This
I
is
don't
true,
like air
folks.
conditioning.
That's right.
Air conditioning. I catch a cold if there's air conditioning. As soon as I walk into a restaurant, I say, put me someplace where there's no air conditioning.
Yeah.
Luckily, they had no such place at the Colony. But there was $10 laying on the floor, which you tried to steal.
He's not making this up. There was a family of Germans at
That's
the next
true.
table, and one of them dropped money out of his pocket, and I saw it, and I said,
Not
well,
deliberately.
No.
No, he had so much money, some of it kept flowing out. That's it. It's like the United States government.
Anyway, I picked it up, and Groucho held it out to the man and said, I thought you might not be able to pay for your check. He looked astounded in German.
That's true.
Yeah.
By the way, he didn't have any money for the check. I think you paid it.
As a matter of fact,
It's a wonderful restaurant.
he jokingly...
I hope next time we'll get in free after this short plug.
I would think so.
I tried that once at Horn and Harditz, and they threw me out. I said, slot machine or no slot machine, you pay cash here.
Do you find it hard to be funny at any certain time of day? I know when you made
No,
films...
not if you get a glorious audience like this. No, I can be funny most of the time.
When you made films, though, you had to get up very, very early and
Yes,
be funny.
that's why I objected to making... I made 18, 19 pictures. I mean that. I don't mean that was the year we made them, 18. It's even worse for women, you know, in the movies. They have to get up at 5 in the morning.
How do they look?
Well, I've never seen them naked, but I imagine...
No, I meant...
No, but they... you know, they used to have men put the body makeup paint on for the women.
Really?
And then the unions got onto that, and they stopped it. Somebody stopped it. I think it was the Vice Squad.
That was the golden age of cinema.
Yes,
I guess.
it was.
Yeah.
Theda Bara. Did I ever tell you about Theda Bara? Not Theda Bara.
Garbo?
Greta Garbo. Did I ever tell you the story of her, the Thalberg building in New York?
I don't think so. Would you
In
like to?
California, yeah. She She used to affect very big hats. She was a very shy woman. She really was. And she had these big hats. And they had, this was a sixth-floor building, the Thalberg building in Los Angeles. And she would back into the elevator if she had to go to the elevator because she didn't want anybody to see her or talk to her. She was such a big star. I was standing in the elevator, too, and she backed in. I didn't know who it was. And I took the back of her hat, which was a way up here, like this, and I took the back and I lifted it down until her whole face was covered. And she was furious. And she lifted the hat up, and she looked at me and gave me a withering look. And I says, I'm terribly sorry. I thought you were a fellow I knew from Kansas City. That's a true story.
That's a nice story.
Yes. I met her subsequently, about 10 years later at a party, and we discussed this, and she was very nice about it. Yeah. She had big feet, but she was a nice woman.
You have a lot of things happen to you in elevators.
Yes, this is true.
I noticed that you were telling me the other day a lady flirted with you, I think, in your hotel elevator. And
frequently, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that...
I had one come up to me the other day and say, aren't you Groucho Marx? And I said, yes. She says, may I kiss you? I says, feel free. I was feeling free at the same time. And she invited me up to her room, but I didn't want to go. She was an old babe. She was around 24 or something.
Yes, that can be dangerous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I had in the Plaza Hotel once, when I was doing the quiz show, there was a priest in the elevator. I hope you're not offended by this, because I would just as lief tell a story about a rabbi, but it doesn't fit. Neither did the rabbi, and they finally threw him out of the synagogue.
But what happened?
Anyhow, this priest said to me, he says, aren't you Groucho Marx? And I says, yes. He says, gee, my mother's crazy about you. And I says, really? I didn't know you fellas had mothers.
What can I say?
I had a priest stop me up in Montreal some years ago. And he came up to me and says, aren't you Groucho Marx? And I says, yes. He says, may I shake your hand? I says, fine. I shook hands with him. He said, I want to thank you for all the joy you've put into the world. And I says, I want to thank you for all the joy you've taken out of it.
We'll be back, though, after that. Stay here. We're back.
First stage manager I ever saw that could count up to 10. I thought you did that very well.
Yeah. He can do it backwards and forwards.
Yes, I imagine he could.
It's the tone of your voice that does something to things you say. Did you say the song they were playing was from Animal Crackers or from...
It's from Horse Feathers.
Horse Feathers.
Carmen Ruby wrote that. I understand there's quite a renaissance of the Marx Brothers movie around the country now.
They're on...
I do have to tell you, before you interrupt, that the Marx Brothers play is being written by my son and his partner, who had a show on Broadway last year.
Arthur.
What was the name of the show? Do you remember?
No.
I don't remember. It was about kids and the younger generation and the different generations. But it's going to be played not by us. It's going to be played by kids around, like the Charlie Brown show, you know, kids of 14, 16, 17. It goes up to the age of about 18, the Marx Brothers.
Were you tough kids?
Was I tough?
Yeah.
No, I wasn't tough, but I was thrifty. I remember we lived in 93rd Street, and there was a very tough kid lived around there. I never told you this.
No.
And I bought 4 balls. These are not oddballs. They used to call them all-day suckers.
Oh, yeah.
Those people now go to the racetrack, but in those days, they were made of candy. But you know, you could suck one of these for 3 hours, and it never got any smaller. And I used to buy 4 for a cent, and I had one in my mouth, and it kind of bulged out here a little bit. And one of these tough guys came along. It was in the winter, and it was snowing hard. And I had 3 of these balls in my hat. In case somebody asked me for one, I would say, well, I don't have any more. But I had 3 in my hat. And this one guy didn't believe me, and he come to me and says, give me one of those those balls, those suckers that you're sucking on there. I said, I haven't got any more. And he hauled off, and he hit me on the chin. And I was out in the snow for 30 minutes, cold. You know, I could have been killed. And after that, whenever anybody asked me for an all-day sucker, I would take off my hat and hand it to them. That's a true
There's
story.
a lesson
It's
in that,
rather
isn't it?
sad, but it's very revealing about how poor and how thrifty I was in those days. It was either that or starved to death.
Is it true you stole a printing press at the age of 10, or is that just a
Yes,
biographical?
no, this is true. When I was about 10 years old, I wanted to be a writer, and I had nothing to write with. I had a lead pencil, but I wanted a printing press. Now, they had them on sale at Bloomingdale's for $1.98. They were about this size, and they had letters in it. You know, you pick out letter H, G, whatever letter you wanted. And I stuck it under my coat. And the floor walker came along, and he saw a peculiar bulge. And he says, "What do you got under there?" And I said, "Nothing." He says, he reached in and pulled out this printing press, and a cop came over and arrested me. And old man Bloomingdale came along around this time, and he says, "What are you doing there? What's the policeman for?" This is, "Well, this kid stole a printing press." I said, "Let him go. All the kids steal in this neighborhood. Let him go." And they did. They let me go, but they didn't give me the printing press. But you know, some years later, one of the Bloomingdale family had a play opening in Philadelphia, and it was a real stinker. And George Kaufman, who was known as the architect of the theater at that time, he was invited by the Bloomingdale Sun to come down to Philadelphia and look at the show and see if he had any suggestions for fixing it. And after the show was over and the curtain was down, Bloomingdale came down in the audience where Kaufman was sitting. He says, "George, what about the show? What should we do about it?" He says, "I'll tell you what you do." He says, "Close the show and keep the store open at nights." One of the soundest pieces of advice I ever heard.
How do you feel about singing?
Singing?
Yeah. I mean,
you mean me or other people?
Well, yes, your own or other people's.
I'm not crazy about other people's. I like a few singers. I like Tom Jones, and I like Jolson, and Cantor sang well, and Perry Como when he was awake. And sometimes people thought he was a corpse standing there. He wasn't really. He was getting a lot of money and worked in a barber shop. But he was a nice fellow and sang beautifully. Anyhow, are you asking me to sing?
Well, I thought I might entice you because you have so many great songs.
I love to sing, really.
Say, I've had... Lydia'd be great. Lydia'd be great.
Then I have to drop the cigar until I come back, and keep your filthy hands off it.
All right, I'm not used to this. Wait a minute. Okay, tell them what it is.
This is a song from a picture called A Day at the Circus, which we did at MGM.
Right.
And I sang this in a Pullman car. But now, why are you applauding a Pullman car? There aren't any more Pullman cars. Anyway, in this picture, we had a gorilla. It wasn't actually a gorilla. It was a gorilla skin with a man inside of it.
Sure.
And he had a manager. This gorilla skin had a manager. This is true. And we engaged him to bring the pelt over to the studio, and then we engaged a man to go inside of the gorilla skin. And he also had a manager. So we had two managers there for one gorilla. And this skin was awfully hot, you know, with all the lights. And it was in the summer, we're doing this scene. And during lunchtime, the fellow who was in the skin, he went over to the lunchroom, and he got an ice pick, and he bored about 40 holes in this gorilla skin. And when he came back, he was very comfortable inside of this skin. But the manager got wind of this, the manager of the skin. And he was in a rage. And he says, "We're not going to permit this." And he says, "Give me my skin. Get that guy out of there." And he threw the pelt over his shoulder and walked out of the studio. Now, we had about 3 more scenes to do with the gorilla, but we had no skin. So we had 6 people from MGM rushing around San Diego and all around that section of California looking for another monkey. We needed another gorilla, but we couldn't get one. We got an orangutan, which is only half the size of a gorilla. Did you know that?
No, but I do now, and I'm glad.
And then we had to get a midget. We had to get a midget to go in this orangutan skin.
Yes, and then what?
And then we got hundreds of letters when the picture come out from fans who said, we don't understand it. The gorilla was this high, and it was only this high in the second half. And we never told them that we had had an orangutan with a midget in it. Lydia, the tattooed lady. She has eyes that men adore so, and a torso even more so. Lydia, oh Lydia, that encyclopedia. Oh Lydia, the queen of tattoo. On her back is the Battle of Waterloo. Beside it, the wreck of the Hesperus too, and proudly above waves the red, white, and blue. You can learn a lot from Lydia. When a robe is unfurled, she will show you the world. If you step up and tell her where. For a dime you can see Kankakee or Paris or Washington crossing the Delaware. Oh Lydia, say have you met Lydia? Oh Lydia, the tattooed lady. When her muscles start relaxing, off the hill comes Andrew Jackson. Lydia, oh Lydia, that encyclopedia. Oh Lydia, the champ of them all. For 2 bits she will do a mazurka in jazz with a view of Niagara that nobody has. And on a clear day you can see Alcatraz. You can learn a lot from Lydia. La, la, la. Come along and see Buffalo Bill with his lasso. Just a little classic by Mendel Picasso. Here's Captain exploring the Amazon. Here's Godiva, but with her pajamas on. Oh Lydia, say have you met Lydia? Oh Lydia, the champ of them all. She once swept an admiral clear off his feet. The ships on her hips made his heart skip a beat. And now the old boy's in command of the fleet, for he went and married Lydia. I said Lydia. He said Lydia. I said Lydia. He said Lydia. You want to complete? You want to go on with the show? Have you had enough?
Why don't we? We can let the audience decide. No, we're...
That's not a fair test,
No.
Dick, because they have no place to go.
That's true. I didn't get to ask you about the rumor that you were running for governor, or somebody asked you to run for governor, or something like that.
Yeah,
I'm sure
in
that's
California. They wanted me to run for governor. This is pre-Reagan, or Reagan, he prefers. And I asked him how much they paid.
Yeah.
And they said it was $35,000 a year. Well, at that time, I was getting $16,000 a week for doing the quiz show. Mm-hmm. So I told them, unless they get raised to that sum, forget about it. It's a true story.
Yeah.
You don't want me to sing anymore, huh?
Oh, I love when you sing.
If I
sing,
yes,
you're singing.
You haven't got any time to talk, and I'd like to hear you talk.
Oh, listen, I'm here every night.
But I'm not.
If you had it to do over, would you do anything different? There were rumors that you once wanted to be other things besides a performer.
I wanted to be a doctor at one time.
You did?
Yeah, horse doctor. No, really, I wanted to be a doctor, but that was before Medicare. I wouldn't do it now. In those days, the doctor could keep all the money he made. Now he keeps about 20%. But what they've done, the doctors, they've raised the price of everything. Mm-hmm. So if you go and get your leg sawed off, it used to cost maybe $85. It'd be about $140 now.
It's hardly worth it, is it?
No, it's hardly worth it. $200, I'd seriously consider it. Or both legs, and then I could say I haven't got a leg to stand on. You know?
They keep writing books about people of
They're writing songs of love, but not for me.
What about that? Very hard to finish.
What about the woman in the hotel in the Regency House? You think that I should give her a ring?
Well,
you know, I'm leaving Sunday.
That's right. So you have a day or so to follow
time,
through on
I
that.
need about 3 weeks.
Oh, you need. Is this a constant in your life? Women accosting you like that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mostly elderly women. The young ones are smart. They know there's nothing going on there. They just...
And it's funny, hard to
tried to make the stage manager a little while ago. When I found out he could count up to 10, I said, that's the boy for me. You know, you're one of the best and wittiest conversationalists.
I always thought you were. Speaking of the
I wasn't speaking of anything. I'm talking about an old broad in the hotel.
But I'm sure she
She's
appreciates.
very rich, she told me, too.
Well, that puts it in a different light.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd get any of it. I mean, of the money.
I knew that was an incomplete sentence, and I was.
I got that from a judge a few weeks ago.
Really? An incomplete sentence?
Yeah.
Was there much...
But he said, don't worry, you'll be back.
May I ask a question? You know,
it's all right with me. I know.
You know the Times interview you gave?
Yeah.
And you talked about everything from mortality to...
God's angry man.
Yeah, yeah.
And I got a lot of mail on that.
I wondered about that.
Do you know that I have a book in the Congressional Library in Washington? Did you know that?
Well,
it's a book of letters that I wrote.
Yeah, your book of letters.
Letters that you were included in the letters, and Fred Allen and Thurber and T.S. Eliot and Benchley and practically every notable in America.
I didn't actually get into the book, but I have letters from you.
But
I just missed the book somehow.
I have letters from you, which are much better than mine. I may do another book on your letters.
We should go
but I was flattered. I was on one of the night shows. I don't want to mention the name of the show. It was the Johnny Carson show. I had mentioned that I had written a book of letters, it's called, by Groucho Marx, with all these notable people on. And the next day I got a letter from the head of the Congressional Library in Washington. Not a letter, phone call. And they asked me if they could have the original letters, which I sent to them. And if any time you're in Washington, you go to the Congressional Library, and you can read my book there. And it's 2 cents a day, by the way. This is true. I'm probably the only actor in the last 40, 50 years that had a book in the Congressional Library. Well, I'm very proud of that. It's one of the few things.
You know, you're very highly regarded among the literati. It's not that you write well for an actor, but that you write well for anybody.
I wrote for an actor a few weeks ago, but he didn't come on. No, I guess you'd call what you'd call a self-made man, which is a sad description of a man. You know, I didn't finish public school, and I've written 5 books, and I've won the library in Washington. Yeah. And they say, you know what they say, self-praise is no praise. Well, let's forget this and get on to something dirty or obscene. Or is it the same thing?
It used to be.
No,
Speaking of this, letters, I've had 3 letters from your friend Harry Ruby in as many days.
He's a congenital idiot. And a compulsive letter writer. He is.
Harry Ruby is the great songwriter also. I thought I'd slip that in.
He's a great friend of mine, too.
Oh.
And he's written virtually all the songs that I sing. Lydia is one of the few songs that I sing that he didn't write. I would like to sing Father's Day, which he did write, but apparently we have no more time.
Why not?
We're way over.
Let's do it. Good.
We're way over.
Do it. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Do it from here.
All right.
We'll get 2 shows in 1 here.
Okay. Well, you know, I think Father's Day, I think, is next Sunday.
It's almost, day after tomorrow, as a matter of fact.
That's true.
Amazing
Today is
time.
Friday. Theoretically, it's Friday. It is actually Friday, because I had fish for lunch. But you know, all the songs that are written over the years in show business are invariably about women, mothers. You know, there's Does Your Mother Come from Ireland? My Mother's Eyes was Jessel wrote. M is for the Million Things She Gave Me, My Yiddish Mama, Mother McCree, Mammy, all those songs. And they neglect fathers. They do. In this country, the father is nothing. He's a jerk. In most homes. There he goes now. You know, there's only 2 songs that I can recall, 3 actually. Mary Martin once sang a song called My Heart Belongs to Daddy. That was a kind of a sexual song.
Really?
Yes, it was, yes. Not incestuous, no, just sexual. Yeah. And then there was a song called Pop Goes the Weasel. That's a great song about that. And then there was one called Everybody Works But Father, which was a big hit. And I'm going to sing you a chorus of that in English, and if you like it, I'll sing it again in German, because this song went all over the world, all over Europe anyhow. And this song went, everybody works but father, he sits around all day. Every feet in front of... Let's start it over again. You're 4 keys too low, or I am.
You mean...
Everybody works but father, he sits around all day. Feet in front of the fireplace, smoking his pipe of clay. Mother takes in washing, so does Sister Ann. Everybody works in our house, but my old man. Now that was a big hit. It wasn't a hit right now.
Yeah.
And then in German it goes this way. Alles schafft, aber nicht Vater. Geht den ganzen Tag herum und raucht die verdammte Pfeife. Das alles geht drüber und drum. Und Mutter nimmt den Washing und auch die Schwester an. Alle arbeiten in unser Platz, aber nicht der alte Mann. I'm going to sing you this song that my good friend Mr. Ruby wrote. Today, Father, is Father's Day, and we're giving you a tie. It's not much, you know, it is just our way of showing you we think you're a regular guy. You say that it was nice of us to bother, but it really was a pleasure to fuss. For according to our mother, you're our father, and that's good enough for us. Isn't that a beautiful melody?
That's lovely.
And a beautiful sentiment. Today, Father, is Father's Day. 16 men in that orchestra. 9 of them are illegitimate children.
How dare you?
9.5, including the director. The tie that you got didn't cost such a lot, and we'll give you the same tie next year. You tell us it was nice of us to bother, but it really was a pleasure to fuss. For they say a child can only have one father, and you are the one for us. Yes, you are the one for us. They'll be calling him the Count pretty soon.
You're very taken with his counting, aren't you?
Yes, I am. Yes. Hardly a duke can do that, what he does.
Say, can I check something with you?
You can check anything with me if I get a check.
Well, I mean by this.
What?
There's a book out about Thalberg, whom I
Yes,
know was
that's
very
true.
important in your career.
It's not in the Congressional Library in Washington.
No. But I've heard you speak very warmly of Thalberg.
Well, I think he was the greatest producer that Hollywood ever produced.
Irving Thalberg.
Yeah. He died at 37. All geniuses die young. Gershwin died at 37. I was going to die at 37, but I couldn't. Well, that's true about Gershwin and Thalberg.
What changed your mind for you?
I don't know. You look lousy at 37. You look better when you get older. These people have sympathy for you.
Is that incident true about Thalberg and you and your brothers?
He was rather an arrogant man. Arrogant isn't really quite the word, but he was a very serious man and a tremendously hard worker. And he always had 4 pictures going at one time. Mm-hmm. He was so busy, and I guess he knew he wasn't going to live long, and he wanted to do a lot while he was living. You know, we did Romeo and Juliet and those pictures. Well, I can't remember them all, but we did 2 pictures with him. Mm-hmm. Night at the Opera and Day at the Races, and by an odd coincidence, they are by far the best pictures we ever did. And it was a severe loss to him. When he died.
Yeah.
And but he had so many writers working for him all the time that it was hard to get to see him. And I remember the first day we come in to see him, we had a call for 10 o'clock in the morning. And we sat there until 5 in the afternoon. We went out for lunch and came back and sat there. And we were humiliated. We'd been big stars on Broadway in 3 musical shows, and to sit there and suffer this humiliation. So at 5 o'clock, he wanted to see us, and I said, no. We'll be here tomorrow morning again at 10 o'clock. But if you don't see us by 10:30, we're walking out. Because we're not going to tolerate this kind of treatment. We don't need the movies. We can go back on the stage. So the next morning, we got in to see him, and at 10:30, he left. He was talking to some other writers on other pictures. Because he did an enormous amount of pictures. And when he went out, Harpo went to the commissary and got some raw potatoes and brought them back. And we put the files, he had letter files. We put those up against the 3 doors of his magnificent office. And then we lit the big fireplace, huge fireplace. And we got the fire going. We took off all our clothes. And we sat in front of the fire and toasted these Mickeys, they were called in those days. And later, about 2 hours later, he knocked on the door. And he wanted to come in. And we finally opened the door, and he saw the boys sitting there naked, eating these potatoes. And he never kept us late again after that. Everybody else was afraid of him. Mm-hmm. Because he had such prestige and power at MGM, but we didn't. We could have gone to vaudeville or back to Broadway or something.
Was he amused by you? Did he make him laugh?
Yes, he was amused by that. Mm-hmm. He liked us because we didn't take anything from him after that, you know. Mm-hmm. If he said something, I always argued politics with him. He was a hopeless reactionary politically, because I was a Democrat and he was a Republican. As soon as they get rich, they become Republicans. Thalberg was, I don't know if that's still true, but it was in those days. He was a poor boy from Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And he went out there and he worked for Carl Laemmle, and he was a genius, and he was an office boy. Before you know it, he was vice president, and MGM put him in charge of 3/4 of the studio there, and he became, they built a building for him out there.
Thalberg.
That's right, took off Garbo's hat.
Yeah.
But he loved us. He loved Chico particularly because he was a fanatical bridge player, and he loved to play bridge in the evening. And he had built a house by the ocean because he loved the ocean. But he had it soundproof so he couldn't hear the waves. That's true.
You've always said that Chico was the most interesting of the brothers. I've heard you say that.
Oh, yes. He had a brilliant mind, Chico. If Chico had gone into mathematics or something, he would have been at someplace in New England, you know, in one of those.
MIT or something.
MIT or one of those. MIT, TIM, MISSI. Don't you remember that song?
I remember something like that.
Mississippi was the name. That's how I learned to spell Mississippi, from hearing that song in vaudeville.
Was Margaret Dumont...
It shows you how times change. I remember years ago, there used to be a theater called the Hammerstein's Theater in Times Square. This is around 40 years ago. And there was an act on the bill. I forget the name of the act, but it was what they used to call a boy and girl act.
Yeah.
The girl sat on a bench, and the fellow would try to make her. Flirt with her.
Flirt with her.
Flirt with her. F-L-I-R-T.
Flirt.
So he came up to her, and he says, "You're a very attractive broad." And he said, "It's a nice day, isn't it?" She says, "It was." And they were canceled after the first performance at the Hammerstein's Victoria because he said broad, and that word was not used in those days to refer to a woman.
Too racy?
Yes, it was. And now when you see people walking around naked in the audience and on the stage,
I know.
it's a whole different kind of a world I've moved in, and I don't belong in this world, really. I'm an incongruity. I don't belong in this thing.
Well, you went to Hair the other night, I know. You finally
I saw the first half of it. Because Tommy Smothers insisted on me going there. But either I didn't understand it, but either that or I found it too vulgar. I'm not interested in seeing naked people on the stage.
No?
Because I can go back to my hotel on the 4th floor. I don't think there's anything sexy about a naked person on the stage. I think women are sexy when they got their clothes on.
You're right about that.
And if later they take them off, then you've triumphed. Now, somebody once said, it's what you don't see that you're interested in. And this is true.
Speaking of ladies...
You go to the beach and you see... Speaking of ladies, there isn't one in the whole audience. Except those two in the front row.
I've always wanted to ask you if...
I've had my eye on those two for a long time.
The two in the front row?
Yeah.
Well, we'll have them
Probably
wrapped
both
for you.
Married, huh?
Yeah.
Take them to the party.
Did Margaret Dumont find you funny? She played the, as everybody knows, the dowager
No, she never
lady.
understood anything I did on the stage.
Is that so?
She didn't really. She thought I was serious.
No
I remember
kidding.
we had a line in Duck Soup, which was one of my favorite lines. And it was a war at the finish of Duck Soup. I'm sure some of the people out here have seen the picture.
It's just on TV.
If you applaud, you only waste time that I could use talking to you. So keep quiet. Just laugh hideously. At any rate, we had a big shell come through a window. And I rushed over to the window and I pulled down the shade. And her name was Otis, my name was Otis Driftwood in this picture. And she says, "Otis, what are you doing there?" I says, "I'm fighting for your honor, which is more than you ever did." At the end of the scene, she came over to me. She says, "What does that mean?" I says, "If you don't know what it means, I can't explain it to you. I'll show you how peculiar the audience and the morals were in those days, the morality of America. There was a scene in Night at the Opera where I'm walking up a gangplank onto the ship, and I have two suitcases in my hand, and she's in back of me, also walking up. And as we walked up, I said to her, she said to me, "Otis, have you got everything?" And I says, "Well, I've never had any complaints yet." You know, in 37 states, that was cut out by the census. This is true.
And she never understood that either?
She never understood anything. A lot of people thought we were married, you know.
She did?
Yes, she was in so many pictures.
Yeah,
The
she
last
was in
show
all
I
the-
did with her was the Hollywood Palace. And
Oh,
she
yes.
was waiting, sitting at the stage door, as though she, at that time, was still a great star. And it was kind of sad. She had a bouquet of roses in her hand, which I think she had bought herself and had delivered to her. And 2 days later, she died.
And she
And
died
the last
between-
show she did was with me on the Hollywood Palace.
She died between tape and air, I believe, as they say. I think she died before it was on the air, didn't she?
Oh, yes, yeah. I thought you were describing something when you said between the tape and the hair. I didn't know what you were referring to.
You thought of the
It
tape
sounded
that holds the
filthy,
wig on
yeah.
or something like that. No, the tape in the...
No, but this isn't that. You know, if you read that in a story, you wouldn't believe it.
I know, it's
That a
it's
woman
almost
who'd
too...
been in 7 or 8 pictures of ours and was close to us on the stage and all over, and still never understood what I was talking about. And that was her charm, I think, that she was deadly serious all the time.
You were the only one who ever said about Hubert Humphrey that he would make a great wife. Do you remember reading that? I never quite understood that, but I sure think maybe
Well, he talked too much in Chicago, but he wasn't effective, I don't think. And I like Hubert. I think he's a fine man and a nice guy.
So the only one who ever saw him as a wife, I expect.
I think he could have been elected if it hadn't been for that mayor in Chicago. That guy was no good. They were hitting children and booting them and kicking them.
Yeah.
Disgraceful. And it was a sad part of America. I hope we're not going to see much more of that.
We will...
Like binding down the universities. I don't approve of that either. You know, there's two sides of this thing. The students have a right to be heard, and the faculty also has a right to be heard, too.
Right.
And since you went to the University of Yale, I was thrown out of the hotel in New Haven. I had a girl with me at the time who was living in another hotel. And the hotel didn't see eye to eye with this.
They frowned on what you were doing?
They didn't approve of it. Now today, I don't think it would bother anybody.
No, they'd let you stay a day and then throw you out.
It was kind of sad. She walked up 7 flights of stairs to get to my room because she didn't want anybody to see her get in the elevator.
Of course not.
And she's a very nice girl, but they eventually threw her out. Because I had pigeons in the room. Did I ever tell you that?
No, pigeons? I'm sure I'd have remembered.
Well, this room had French doors that opened this way.
Yeah.
And it was around the 7th floor, I think. And the pigeons kept flying into the room. You know, like they do in New York on windowsills. I don't know if they do it here anymore like they used to. And I was trying to make love to this girl, and a pigeon was biting my ear. I thought it was her. And I was encouraged by this, but... So the girlfriend, she says, "Get those pigeons out of here." I said, "I have no control over these pigeons. I don't even live here in New Haven. I didn't know one pigeon of this whole gang out there." So I called downstairs, and I got to the 2 hotel dicks. You know what they are?
Yeah.
Detectives.
Hotel detectives.
Yes, and they came up, and apparently they were accustomed to this, because they come up, and they didn't say anything about the girl or the pigeons or anything else. They took off their coats.
Right.
They opened the door to the hall, and then they waved their coats, and all the pigeons went out into the hall and disappeared. I don't know. May have gone to another room. I don't know where they went to. But that was one of the saddest affairs I ever had in my life.
But it's one of the best pigeon stories I've ever heard.
Well, it's a true story, too. Yes.
That's terrific.
I got to know those pigeons very well.
You wrote a book called Beds, and I wish it were still in
Beds.
print. It's one of the funniest things I've ever read, and it's very hard to find the book.
Yes, it is a kind of a collector's item now. You know, it was written about 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I also wrote a book called Groucho and Me, Memoirs of a Mangy Lover. That was about me. I had the pigeons in mind at that time. I wrote a very funny book called Many Happy Returns.
Yeah.
About the taxes. But the day that book came out with Simon and Schuster, war was declared in the Pacific. And nobody bought a book about taxes, and you know, it wasn't it wasn't very democratic or very patriotic. With the 3,500 sailors drowning in Pearl Harbor there.
And it was the
and
same
me,
day
I wrote a funny book, yes.
Yeah.
Maybe they didn't want the book anyhow, but it's a funny. Did you ever read it?
No, but I'd be glad
I'll send
to.
you a copy.
Would you?
I think I have a copy. Yeah.
All right. Great.
So
We have to pause, and we'll be back. You mind? Groucho, thank you for being here. I think that
it was a pleasure.
in all time.
You want to shake hands?
I always want to shake hands. Yes, I think that one person got to be Groucho Marx, and you're the one, and you're very lucky, and we're lucky, and we'll see you again. Thank you. See you Monday.
We invite you to join us again Monday night for the Dick Cavett Show. Good night.